Part one, it's good, but just as far as for Hunger Games, it just didn't do it for me. It didn't really hit that spot for me. It was a little too like drawn out and not like too much action. But that is because not that I've read the book, but I know that they're like getting ready for the war and it's very like preparatory. But yeah, but I still like overall like the kind of metaphorical aspect to the Hunger Games, like how we are with reality TV today in the media, and how we can kind of let that overrun us. And I like how these like stories kind of like express on that, and like kind of go into a scenario of like what would it be like if the world was more brutal, and especially with kids fighting to the death on TV. So, but yeah, I still need to like dip through the like all three of the books. I read most of the first one, and I liked what I read of it. I like Suzanne Collins's details and her descriptions, and this the story itself. Like I say, like it's metaphorical to it how our world, or at least I would say the U.S. is. So but yeah, but this one though, I was like after part one, I was kind of just neutral on my excitement for this one. I mean, despite that it is the last installment for the first phase of the Hunger Games, I'll say. Um, but yeah, but having seen it though, I like the energy of this one compared to part one. I like that in the at least in the first one, the part one, it's ultimately political and very dialogue based, and you see Katniss like training and um, it's almost like literally like presidential debates how that can be in like a weird way, but obviously like in a more dictator type world, the dictatorship type world. Um, but yeah, but the key players for this one, I thought they all did good. I mean, especially it being their last time playing these characters, and mainly Jennifer Lawrence, because in part one I felt like she was just sort of going through the motions of playing Katniss, but and it was good to see more of Pito and Joanna in this one. I definitely didn't like that we didn't get a lot of them in part one. But yet on that same front, Julianne Moore, she killed it in this role, but I felt like there wasn't enough of her for part two, despite how more prominent her character becomes. And R.I.P. to Philip Seymour Hoffman. I've always been a fan of him, and it's definitely nice to see him in this. And but he doesn't talk a lot, but it's definitely nice to see him, just be there. And the fact that like if you, especially if you read these books, you know what his character, what he represents. So, um, but yeah, so like I say, like compared to part one, I would say the energy is definitely like different and more like cat and mouse, and I like that you almost feel like you're with these characters going from A to Z as Snow is like tracking them and all that. Like yeah, it keeps you kind of more on the edge. But yeah, any pros cons?
Pros, it was a nice ending to the movies and
Yeah,
actually stayed tribute to, well, most of it to the book. Some scenes were, I mean, some of the parts in the book weren't in the film, so that was a little disappointing, but I understand why.
yeah.
Second pro was Donald Sutherland's performance of President Snow throughout the whole series. Excellent choice for him. I don't think I could see anyone else play the villain.
Yeah, no, and I definitely would have to second that. I mean, even though, like, to some people, or at least to our peers, Donald Sutherland, his character, like, might seem like whatever, like, kind of minimal in his performance, in his role, but obviously in the books, like, he's a big deal. He's, like, kind of the one that gets this whole ball going. But for Donald himself, it was cool for him to, like, hop on to this film series, and he actually wanted to do it because he likes the message of the books and what they stand for. And yeah, and I was glad that like since he is getting up there in age, I was glad that he was able to play President Snow for yeah technically four times for the movies, but for filming like three times. Um, but yeah, in any cons?
Just that.
Oh yeah, yeah, the length, like the stuff that was cut out.
Yep.
Cons for me, I like that we do have like the balance of more action in here, but on the same front, I thought some of the sequences were a little too quick cut or too dark to see. But I have like a list of little favorite bits and action scenes from this movie. Um, and another con is that, and also like you're saying, it is like the last for this last movie for this phase of the Hunger Games. Like they're still working on future movie plans, but for me, I didn't get the impression that it was like the last. Like, and I don't know again if that's just because I'm aware of what they want to do or just the movie itself. I'm just so used to this movie world and the movies being released every like year, just about every 1 to 2 years. So it just yeah, like even though it is the end, like it almost didn't like totally feel like it either, and I don't know if that's really a good or bad thing, but yeah. Um, I definitely can't wait to get into the books because even though I've seen all the movies, I like that in the books you're in Katniss's head. So, but yeah, my rating for this, I'd give it an 8 out of 10.
I give it a 10 out of 10. An excellent sequel, but Catching Fire will be the better one. In my
Yeah, no, Catching Fire, I'll have to agree with him on that too. Like, for my rank for the Hunger Games movies, like I like the Hunger Games and or Catching Fire, Hunger Games, and Mockingjay Part Two, and but Part One, I again, it's like at least it's good to watch for like the you know how serious they are about this war and the revolution.
Yeah, the first three, like Catching Fire, the first Hunger Games, and Mockingjay Part Two, all got 10 out of 10 for me. But Part One of Mockingjay, I gave it a 7. Was sort of more mellow, just preparing for the war.
Yeah,
But I still enjoyed all three excellent movies.
yeah. And actually, and as mellow as Part One is, when Part Two eventually comes on DVD, I would say that Part One and Part Two are they would make a good double feature.
That's what I'm planning on doing once I get that.
So yeah, if you Hunger Games, if you like these movies or even more of the books, give this a go.